Hello, Politics Unplugged. In this searing episode, explosive, we're going to talk about two issues of significant importance. First of all, we're going to take a look at the China's nightmare, BRICS calculations, when Iran collapsed, and how it threatens new world order. And the second, we are going to talk about empires provoking bombs, not preventing them, out of hypocrisy. Welcome to Twisdon360 Politics Unplugged. No filter, no spin, just truth. While the West escalates tensions with Iran, there is another silent power watching the chessboard nervously, China. To Beijing, the collapse of Iranian government isn't just a regional issue, it is a nightmare scenario, one that risks energy insecurity, Belt and Road disintegration, and geopolitical chaos. Einar Tengen, a senior Chinese policy analyst, recently summed it up with striking clarity. A collapse in Iran would be worse than Syria, worse than Libya, and the Gulf would explode. Why? Because China's stakes in Iran are vast, and massive. Iran is a key oil supplier to China's growing energy needs. It is an anchor point in the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a BRICS partner pushing for a multipolar world order. For Beijing, Iran is not a battlefield. It is a pillar of global balance. If it's collapse, it means more than war. It means economic shock, mass displacement, and the unraveling of a new world system. But what happens when that system is threatened? The strategic ambiguity of China between non-intervention and national interest. Unlike the US, China doesn't speak in war cries. It whispers through diplomacy, trade, and long-term alignment. But silence doesn't mean indifference. If the US or Israel ignites full-scale war in Iran, Beijing may not send missiles, but it will move decisively to secure energy routes, to stabilize markets, to coordinate within BRICS, and perhaps most importantly, to challenge US dominance in the Middle East. Let's be clear, China's silence is strategic, but the BRICS alliance is watching. If Iran is crushed, the rest of the bloc knows they are next. South Africa, Brazil, Russia, China, and now Iran. These are not perfect nations, but they represent a growing resistance to Western economic, military, and ideological control. What this means for the empire is pushing Iran to the brink, but in doing so, it is isolating itself from the majority of humanity. This is not just about Tehran, it is about shooting down multipolarity. If Iran survives, independent, sovereign, and unbowed, it becomes a model. If Iran falls, the message to all others is clear: resist and be destroyed. So the West manufactures consent, Israel provokes, the US threatens, and the media spins. That's why we tell you to come to Twisdon360 Politics Unplugged, where we offer no spin but truth, a truth but the truth. But this silence of China is of a concern. And the concern is about why Chinese will just bastardize their allies, and allies of significance important like Iran in terms of BRI initiative, because the regime change in Iran means a lot to China. After all, if the Chinese are getting cheaper energy from Iranians, then they shouldn't be silent. At least they have to do something, maybe the way they have done it with Russia. Maybe not directly sending missiles, but sending the component for Iran to make a bomb so that they can be able to fight the war and survive. And that is one part. The segment 2 is also sharing about how the empire is provoking bombs. When empires creates what it claims to prevent, they say Iran must be stopped from acquiring a nuclear weapon. But what if it is their own bombs, drones, and assassinations are pushing Iran there in the first place? According to leaked US document, intelligence assessment reported by the New York Times, a senior American official quietly admit what many of us on the anti-imperialist left have long suspected. If the United States strike Iran's Fordo nuclear enrichment site, or if Israel assassinates Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's leadership is likely to begin producing a nuclear bomb. Let that sink in. The West is not preventing a nuclear Iran, it is provoking one. Manufactured threats, manufactured justifications. For years, Washington and Tel Aviv have painted Iran as a reckless nuclear threat. But behind the closed doors of the intelligence community, they admit the truth. Iran has not yet chosen to build a bomb and may never have, because in their Shiite doctrine and their religion view that you can't just manufacture a hydrogen bomb. There was a time the Iranian military and political leaders went to Ayatollah to ask him about having a nuclear weapon. He said it is haram, it is prohibited in Islam to have hydrogen bomb. And the US intelligence community knows this perfectly well. Not only this leaked, even Tulsi Gabbard, the national intelligence chief of Donald Trump, admit that the Iranians are not building nuclear, are not enriching uranium to have a nuclear. Then why Israel attack them in an unprovokingly provocative manner and expect them not to fight back? That is ridiculous. Yet, at the very same time, the US and Israel launched cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear program, assassinate Iranian scientists, play drones over Iranian airspace, threaten full-scale war almost weekly. There was a time that Donald Trump claimed that we're going to bomb them like they have never been bombed before. And do you really believe that? Expect an Iranian leader watching America or Israel bombing Iran like it has never been bombed before? That is mind-boggling, and it's outlandish to even believe that. Then they act surprised that Tehran may finally say enough. This is not non-proliferation, this is provocation, escalation, and imperial nuclear blackmail. And here is the kicker. The same empire that threatens Iran with war will then use Iran's reaction as a justification for even more war. It is a vicious cycle that the US empire has perfected since Vietnam, Iraq, Libya, and indeed Afghanistan, and even Syria. And as we have been talking about it recently, we have been mentioning his name, Vali Nasr. Vali Nasr was right. The guy says that Iran's strategy is survival. As Vali Nasr, the Iranian American scholar, once wrote, Iran's nuclear this is a country surrounded by US military bases, sanctioned into economic crisis, sabotaged from inside, its allies murdered, its airspace violated, waterways, Hormuz Strait was, like I said, the empire's trap, manufacturing consent of war. Let's be brutally honest, what we are witnessing is the same script they used against Iraq. Hype up WMD threats, ignore diplomatic channels, push provocations until the targets react. then sell war to the public under the banner of self-defense. And even the Western public has come to realize that it is total lies. And there was a mass demonstration against the Iraq war. But yet Blair and Bush continue, invaded Iraq, and now what we have is completely different. And everyone knows what we have after Iraq was invaded. We have ISIS, we have Islamic State there. Everybody's remember Mosul and the battles. And this is typical tactics of imperial empires. And if Iran moves toward bomb, it will be because the US and Israel force their hand, not because it is Iran's strategy or not because Iran wants a war. But by then, the propaganda machine will be in full gear. CNN will say Iran wants nuclear. The EU will say all options are on the table. The UN will be bullied into silence, and a new cycle of destruction will begin while oil prices skyrocketed, refugees poured into Europe from and Africa, and the global south suffers. And yet the far right will rise up. We don't want them. We don't want refugees. And that is the problem of troubles and conflicts and turmoils that they are creating or they are engulfing in the global south. They suffer and we suffer. When the refugee pours into Europe and the Africa and global south begins to suffer, they will start talking about the far right is rising, the far right is against refugee, while the exact same reason is them by fueling the conflict. And we must say clearly, this is not about Iran, it is about empire. It is about preventing a sovereign nation from asserting its right to exist outside the empire's leash. Because if Iran allowed to defend itself, then so can Venezuela, so can Cuba, so can Palestine, so can Burkina Faso, so can South Africa, so can Zimbabwe, and any state that dares to say no, that is the nightmare scenario, not for us, but for Washington and Tel Aviv. As Cornel West, a renowned Afro-American scholar, once said, the US is an empire, and empires don't have allies. They have vassals, and that's all they have. Iran refused to be one, and for that they are punished. But the world is changing. The global south is watching, and the multipolar order is rising. We say no to war, no to nuclear hypocrisy, not to this imperial trap. And today the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Araghchi, went to the European Summit in Geneva for a talk, for an agreement, for a diplomacy. Iran has not refused diplomacy. Every time they are called, they went on diplomacy. But what is happening at the end of the day, they are getting strikes by the Israel. Yet the Iranian foreign minister made it absolutely clear they are never going to accept any form of negotiation without the stop of aggression. They cannot be bullied into accepting deals while their sovereignty, their people, their country, their nation is being attacked by Israeli airstrike. This is Twisdon360 Politics Unplugged. No filter, no spin, just truth. Share this episode, amplify the truth, because the next war has been scripted and we must stop it. We must stop it, the performance before it begins. Thank you very much, everybody. This is Twisdon360 Politics Unplugged. It's an extraordinary episode today. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and listen, watch, because the AI, the algorithm, the internet, the meta, they're going to do you a favor. You're going to do yourself a favor. So by sharing, by liking, by listening, you do yourself a favor. Thank you very much and see you in another episode. Thank you.